Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us today for the Artist Talk with Chris Trueman. Chris will be sharing his experience incorporating Playform AI into his art practice, walking Playform users through the process of creating his new exhibition titled AI Visions. Chris Trueman is a visual artist based in Claremont, California. Trueman has exhibited his work in numerous exhibitions in Los Angeles, San Francisco, DC, La Jolla, Seattle, Portland, and internationally in Milan, Paris, Berlin, Beijing, and more. Now at the forefront of the NFT space, Trueman has created several NFT works on various marketplaces. Created using Playform AI, Chris Trueman's exhibition AI Visions explores the experience of art viewing in a digital world. As an abstract artist, Trueman investigates the projected biases that art viewers place on abstract works. Viewers might see objects, faces, or tell themselves stories about what the meaning behind those works are. What does it mean then when an AI companion begins to do the same? So this exhibition explores those concepts. With their own visual quality and personality, the works are available as select NFTs on CreatoRanch, a new NFT marketplace built specifically for creators, curators, and collectors. To view the available works, you can go to playform.io/AI Visions to view the exhibition page. And from there, you can collect the original works on CreatoRanch. You can also check out an exclusive blog feature with the artist at playform.io/editorial/AI Visions. And for those of you who have questions throughout the talk, you can add them to the chat and we will get to them towards the end of the talk. So now I would like to officially introduce Chris Trueman. Hey, Chris.
Hi, guys. Thank you for joining in today.
Thanks for being here. Let's just jump right in. Can you walk us through your process in creating these works for AI Visions?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I played with heavily on Playform was the sketch function. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and I'm going to. I need to have access. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we are. This is inside Playform, and actually I'll go back so you guys can see what we're doing here. Underneath Sketch, what I did was I would create a new project, and then I thought it was really interesting to play with the surreal composition. This is basically what that means is that the AI model has been trained on surrealism, which is heavy in figuration and in other humanoid forms. So down the bottom here, I will create a project, and then what I was doing, you have all these options here. These are pre-established artists that you can choose their style, and what I was doing is I was uploading my own style. So let's say, for instance, this is a abstract painting here, digital painting, and so I'm choosing my own style. And then from there, I can sketch, I can draw. And so I would create these really interesting little abstract compositions. And oftentimes that they're very loose, sometimes there is a sense of, compositional space. But a lot of times I'm just kind of working back and forth, creating different forms. There's a symmetry option that I think is really interesting, where it sort of mimics, on both sides of the, either a horizontal or vertical axis, and I can kind of continue to draw until I feel like I've got something that's an interesting composition. I really like this idea that I can erase back into it too. So I'm getting these layers of negative space and positive space. And I want a certain amount of density as well. That's something, variety, density, a lot of visual character that I can kind of build into these little drawings. And I'm drawing with a mouse, so I don't have a lot of control over what I'm doing, but I just kind of go until I intuitively feel like it's, an interesting doodle. And then from there, I'll hit generate images. And so what I've got an abstract painting that a digital painting that I've made, and then I've got my abstract sketch, and then the AI model has been trained on surrealism. And so what happens is that it starts to find these sort of strange body-like forms within the space. And so, I'll take that and maybe I think it needs a little bit more, let's, it's a little too even, I'd say. So then I can kind of start like messing around with it more.
And like, so I know that you work a lot in, like, you've mentioned that your work is predominantly, incorporating layers and light and shadow, like in your traditional painting. And like, from what you're doing here with this sketch, do you feel like that rings true here as well? Like, is there a way to kind of include that level of precision or like desire for layering?
Yeah, well, to me, what my process in painting has a little bit of a balance between control and then sort of lack of control, based on the materiality. There are a lot of time-based elements in my painting where, I've got X amount of time for the paint to dry, and what I do is I'll lay down say a wet mark. And then I paint around it, and then while that's still wet, but I'll allow the edges to dry a little bit, and then I'll squeegee those off. And so it's a fairly intricate process, but depending on if it's summertime and it's really dry outside, then the paint's going to dry faster. There's not 100% control over the process. So I have certain expectations of what I'm going to get from making these marks. And when I work digitally, I find that one of the things that I was missing is this element of a lack of control. I felt like I was pretty much in control of every element. So by introducing the AI, I was able to get, this sort of collaborative effort from the AI to kind of strip control from my hand a little bit and enable me to get unpredictable results. Now I'm still, putting in the initial images, and I'm still doing the sketches, and I'm editing down from there. So as it's still somewhat underneath my, my guide. But the net effect and what ends up coming out of it, I think can be really surprising because of that turning over of control. Another thing that I've done with this is I've started with a background image. So, I'm just going to select another painting here. And what it does is it'll load that sort of underneath as an image. And then I can kind of continue to work on top of that. So, to me, it feels a little too dense, so maybe I'll cut out some negative space here. Now, what it does for the the background, it converts my digital painting into black and white, and so it's a sort of a black and white version. I could put a more simple blocky image underneath, and that might yield completely different results as well. But I like this idea that I'm at this point I've fed, one is the uploaded style, which is my painting. And then I've created a background also based on my painting. And then I've sort of doodled on top of it. And I've been able to generate these forms from that as a starting point. And so I did a whole bunch of these. I probably did like, I don't know, 100 or, 150 of these. And what I started to realize is that not only was it finding figuration within the abstraction, which I thought was really interesting, but there was definitely like a real character quality to it. I don't know if you want to show some of the resulting images from the show, but we can take a look at that, and there's almost a narrative quality to it that I find to be really surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who want to see the final results of the exhibition, you
Here, I'll
can
stop share. We can.
or it's also just in the chat as well, the link. So in your process of this exhibition, like how did you, decide which previous works that you had created would be useful in this type of method of creating with AI? Like, did you go through your body of work and say, oh, I want to try this, I want to try that? Or was it you were trying everything and it was trial and error?
There was a lot of trial and error, because sometimes I would expect to be able to influence it one way or another, and then I would put the image in, and the resulting, picture that I got back was completely different. Which I thought was part of the fun, but also, I ended up getting really interesting results out of this. I mean, if you look at the one on the top left there, the AI V1, the green one, it looks like he's wearing sunglasses. And I
Yeah,
just think it's
totally.
really bizarre to be able to, there's a very uh, specific kind of character quality to that image. And to find out that that just comes from a collection of abstract work with these sort of processes that is filtered through this surrealist trained AI. And I really do feel like it's a lot like the way that people view abstract painting in general. When I have my exhibitions, everybody approaches it with a different point of view and a history of understanding abstract, whether it's abstract expressionism or whether they've really followed abstraction, or whether they're kind of, early on in their exploration. They come away with, some of them are looking for trees and looking for recognizable objects. And for me, I've been doing abstraction for so long that my frame of reference is abstract, and I read it as such. So when I put it out for a show, I feel like I'm relinquishing control of the meaning and the interpretation to the audience. And so very much in the same way, when I'm turning it over to the AI, I'm relinquishing my control to this process, and saying, okay, you're going to find in it what you find in it, and that's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, even though you're relinquishing your control in these certain elements, you're also maintaining a level of control that has not necessarily been explored before, which is like selecting the images,
Mhm.
curating the images down. And so, kind of going back to that, like once you take the images from the sketch tool, then you put it into a training process, right?
Yes, so sometimes I have done that where I've taken those and then I put it into a further training process. So I'm further distilling those efforts in order to get more variations on that. I think that it all sort of, you saw where it started, and then I put it back into the training model, and it's combining some of the characteristics that it sort of found in the first set to create more variations on that theme.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what does that curation process look like for you? Like specifically with this exhibition, how do you decide how to narrow it down from the hundreds of generated images that Playform can come out? I mean, I talk to artists a lot who are using Playform, obviously, and one of the things that comes from it is like, well, which one of these works best out of hundreds of them? Do you have certain strategy or tactics in selecting the final pieces?
Yeah, so in this particular exhibition, because I saw this sort of emerging storyline, this emerging sort of implied narrative because of the character quality of the images, I started deliberately picking pieces that I could kind of relate to, you know, uh, I mean, the AIV3, for instance, reminds me of Game of Thrones. And so it's just, I don't know, I don't really know where that came from, or how it arrived there, but being able to pause and to recognize that, okay, that's really interesting, that not only is it finding a figure, but there's very much a kind of historical, or not historical, but cinematic reference to it, is really interesting. So in that case, I started sort of picking characters, from this exhibition, and ones that, some of them are a little bit more loose than others. And AIV4, it's very apparent. You can see the figure with a sort of blue background, and it reminds me. There's an old movie with Anthony Hopkins where his face is blue. So I saw that and I thought, oh, wow, that's a very clear reference to me. So in this case, it was a little bit more of like a curatorial process, where I'm selecting images that almost become these kind of placeholders within this larger narrative that I'm building. Which is very different than the way that I work as a painter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this kind of leads to my next question, which is like, as an abstract painter and then also a digital artist, how has, the implementation of AI expanded or shifted your body of work and how you create basically?
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing is that I haven't done figure eight. I mean, I was a figurative painter before I was an abstract painter, but I haven't done figuration for 20 years. So it just really hasn't been something that's on my radar. And so this is funny enough, this is the first foray into figuration, that I've had in the past 20 years. And it does get me thinking about the way that we approach things, the way that we see the world. And sometimes we can get so deeply involved in what we're doing that we can't get a larger, more broad view of that action. And so when I circulate within schools of abstraction and buddies of mine that are also abstract painters, and we get very nitty gritty about the formal qualities of abstract painting, then to kind of take a step back and it's sort of like when I have a show, and I'll one conversation will be about the philosophical merits of abstract painting, and then the next one will be hey, is that a bird? um so there's really there's a wide viewing audience, and to be able to accommodate those things, and to basically be able to say, at this point it's no longer for me, this is sort of
Right.
for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we've talked about this before, but like it's kind of your process has kind of reminded me of like the way that Pollock would let the paint drip and just like let it happen. And so how does that ring true for you in this exhibition? And how might that ring true for you in like the future of your art?
Yeah, well, and in these, these become the final product. That's one thing too, is that there are other pieces that I've done with the freeform aspect of AI, where I've taken those layers and made videos, and then those become, say, like layer number 2 and 3 out of a 5-layer video stack. So that's kind of a different thing, where it becomes a sort of organic, moving, flowing object. Whereas this, I'm letting it stand. I'm not going back in with Photoshop with these, and I'm not carving them out and re-emphasizing them and manipulating them. I'm letting this sort of be as it is, but I'm also the one that makes that decision about the merits of these particular pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for someone who's like new to Playform, could you kind of run us through like, your strategy or technique of kind of where to begin? How do you know what to input and how do you know which process to choose? Obviously, it's going to be subjective for each artist and their artistic goal. But for you at least, where did you really begin with it?
Well, I began with freeform, which is you input a set of, I think it's like 30 to 50 images. And what I found is that if the images were too broad, then the results that I was getting could get muddy, right? You're not sort of you're sort of providing too many data points, and maybe if I trained it long enough, then they would narrow. But I would find that I would get a little too much noise and mud. But if I do too similar, if they're too much like each other, then I think I start to get a little bit too much repetition, and it's not actually building in variety. So finding that balance was a lot of trial and error. A lot of it was, and what you get out of after training for an hour is not what you get after training for 6 hours or 10 hours. As they went further and further, I was getting much more interesting results. And so, which makes sense. I also, some of the result sets were like 12,000 images, 15,000 images. So it was an enormous amount of visual, data that I was getting out of the process. And then this is a very common digital problem, is what do we do with this glut of data that we have? What do we do with this information? And so for me, what I wanted to do is I wanted to take it and I wanted to kind of pluck the gems out of the bunch and be able to do something with that. So it is sort of like taking a step back and functioning as a curator. There's a reason why I'm reacting to certain images based on, my preferences and my training. And maybe I'm looking for a particular thing, and then I can select those out and, weave them together in an interesting way. So that was more or less how I got started. And then I decided to play around with the sketch functions, and I thought that was really interesting. In particular, when I was able to find this sort of figuration that was finding itself within these abstract images.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's, Playform can become personal for each artist. Like the sketch tool worked for you, but for someone
Mhm.
else, it might be Creative Morph, or Face Mix. So I think
Yeah.
that, the the starting point is just to really experiment with everything. And that can really relate to any type of artistic practice or method as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think I come at it from a little bit different perspective, in that, I'm not starting from representation to begin with. So
Right.
if you're a landscape photographer, if you're um, if you're a figurative, artist, then I think what you're going to look for in the results is going to be completely different. So for me, I was looking for things that surprised me, and that kind of introduced, this kind of new kind of characterization, that I could use to sort of expand what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, if you can also briefly touch on CreatoRanch, which is where this body of work will be, the new marketplace. If you can go ahead and tell our audience a
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely. So I was approached by some tech veterans, back in March, who had, a ton of technology, and were looking for somebody in the NFT space that had a good experience, or a fair amount of experience with the different marketplaces, but also somebody that had, been involved in the physical art world. And I happened to straddle both. I had done a bunch of NFTs on almost all of the marketplaces and really dived in. So I started talking with them, and as a result, we ended up building a mobile NFT marketplace on the Tezos blockchain. It's on iOS and on Google Play. And our goal was to remove the barrier for a lot of the creators. So that basically meant that we needed to eliminate the cost of minting. We needed to make it environmentally friendly. We needed to make it, a lot of my friends weren't able to get through the curatorial gatekeeping that was happening on a lot of the platforms. So we wanted to eliminate that. And then we also wanted to make it easy enough for people to use, eliminate some of the tech barriers. And so that's why that was the goal of creating this app. And so, we've kind of soft launched about a month ago. And now we're building out the platform, and it has a lot of social functionality built into it. So I think it's a really great solution, because I've a lot of the other marketplaces have, really great attributes for, one thing or another. But I didn't really see all of them coming together. And so that was kind of the impetus to build this platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with an artist perspective, you have that, you had that drive to kind of pursue a solution to this. So, can you tell us a bit about like as an artist who, was starting in the traditional abstract painting method to transitioning to NFT art, a bit about that narrative for you and how someone might want to get into that if they're just starting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had, all the way back in undergrad at the San Francisco Art Institute, and this is 2003. I double majored in painting and digital media. So this is a really long-standing interest for me, but there really wasn't an outlet for digital art. So I made all this cool stuff, and then, my galleries didn't want to show it because there was no way to sell it. There was no, they're like, oh, that's really cool, but I don't know what to do with it. And so, I worked mostly on paintings, and for the last 20 years, I've been developing my painting career. But I've always done these digital things on the side, and even conceptually, I did a dual show in Australia and LA where I took 6 pieces and I reproduced those 6 pieces as closely as possible digitally. And then I divided the originals and the replicas between the two spaces. They launched at the same time, LA, I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
The two shows launched at the same time, and the idea was that more people would see these shows on social media than would ever see them in person. And so the idea of two shows that are identical opening up, across two continents at the same time, it was about this discussion of seeing artwork in person, versus artwork online, and the way that most of the way that we're exploring the world is digitally. So I've been embracing that for a number of years. And so when the NFT space came about, and I originally minted in 2018, and I'll be honest, I was slow to understand what was going on. But once I understood, I was like, this is going to open up new avenues for all kinds of artists, and we're going to get so much interesting stuff. So I was really excited about it then, and I'm even more so now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, with the pandemic, more people were home and there were less opportunities for artists to, exhibit their work. And so this was like an awesome opportunity for people to explore that digitally. So you touched upon how like CreatoRanch is kind of resolving some of the problems that the traditional NFT marketplaces have had. Can you touch a bit more on that, and go further in depth with that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big concerns, and I mean, the ETH2 layer 2 solution is supposedly coming, but it's the massive amount of electricity that's used by Ethereum. And when I started, I wasn't aware of that, and I had no idea that was part of the conversation. And then I learned just the quantity of it. It was just like enormous. So seeing proof of stake blockchains like Tezos and Matic, and Polygon, come around, and Solana, I think it's helping to make it viable. Whereas it just ETH at the current energy consumption levels and at gas, sometimes you go to mint, and it's $1,000 to mint an NFT. So unless you're an established NFT artist, you're kind of doing that on spec. Do you want to put $1,000 into minting an NFT and putting it out there, with maybe the prospect that it won't sell? So I think this sort of next generation apps and platforms are going to better address those, where there's going to be gasless minting, or proof of stake, like CreatoRanch is free to mint. And then also the curatorial standards. A lot of the platforms had sort of made themselves the galleries, and I mean, they were early on, and they were the early developers. So, I have a debt to pay to them as well. At the same time, that keeps a lot of people out. And I think that the best thing about this is that more people can get in and more people can try it out. And that way, it opens it up to new audiences. I think there's a very small percentage of crossover between my traditional collectors and my NFT collectors.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, kind of going back to a previous question, for someone who is looking to, they're just starting to use Playform, they want to get into an NFT space. Do you have any advice or, tactics to kind of get into that world?
Yeah, and even though I'm a founder of an NFT platform, I'm also I do think of going cross platform. One of the beauty of NFTs are that they are somewhat decentralized, and I think artists should, there are different audiences, there are different populations on each one of the platforms. The Hicket Nuke community is amazing, which is the other Tezos-based platform. The website is really difficult to use, and so that was one of the things that we kind of set out to do, is to make that more easy to use and operable. And then also we wanted to make ours open. So, anybody who wants to download it, it's on the Apple Store, it's on the Google Store, you can just download it and use it. So it's socially curated, as in kind of like Instagram, you follow who you want to follow. And that's different than, say, top-down gatekeeping, because on, say, Maker's Place, I had friends that were waiting 3 months to get on there for, their storefront to be approved. And so I'm telling them how great this is, and then they can't get on.
Right.
Let's say Nifty Gateway. I was early on in Nifty Gateway, and later on, they were like, oh, well, I'm sorry, we can't put you in the calendar because we've got Steve Aoki. So that's kind of what happened, around March and April, was that as I was telling people how great this is, they weren't able to access it. And I thought that was, that was really a bummer. And so with this, I do think people should try other things. Foundation has a different clientele, and Super Rare, and it's all, there's overlap for sure, but I think there are a lot of really interesting things that you can do sort of across the whole spectrum. And so we want to be able to provide functionality, let people test things out and be experimental, and with no low risk. I'll say that. You can post things out there and just see what happens. And I think that when you can get to that level of experimentation without high cost and without high risk, then some really interesting things happen, and sometimes by accident. And so that's, I think, a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, CreatoRanch is a super exciting new company, and, an awesome way to let more people in, also be environmentally conscious. How do you see, like, I feel like we are really at this specific point in the art world where things are changing, converging, experimenting. How do you see the future of the art world as an artist and also as a co-founder of a new NFT marketplace?
So I just got back from NFT.NYC, which is a big conference in New York City for NFTs. And it was supposed to be about 2,000 people. And they ended up with about 5,000 people, and they just kept adding venues and speakers, and it just kind of mushroomed. And I really think that that's kind of what's going to happen. I'm going to Miami in the next couple of weeks for Art Basel, and I'm going to have NFTs on display at Untitled Art Fair with Winston Walker Gallery. But also, just the number of NFTs that I've heard that are going to be there are, it's blossoming. It opens it up to a huge amount of people that have been digital creators, or who have been, illustrators, or animators, or different people that have never really been able to do this, to create artwork and display it and get it out there and have collectors and have support and stuff. And so I think it's just going to continue to expand. And I think that most people are, in addition to the paintings and the artwork that they have on their walls, they're going to have screens or prints or whatever of digital art. My phone always reminds me of how much time I spend, and which is awful. But I'm living a lot of my life digitally, and managing digital assets and personas and profiles and everything else. And so that's going to become a bigger part of our lives. And with it, we're going to have our digital artwork and our digital assets and digital, our profile pictures and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of going off on that with this, with the advent of NFTs, it also kind of opens a new pathway for digital art as well. And so that's kind of where Playform comes in, is that it's kind of working hand in hand. What do you see the future of digital art looking like as well? And how has using AI in your art practice kind of enhanced that?
Well, first of all, there are better tools. I love the fact that Playform is so easy to use. I'm not a data scientist or a programmer, so I needed something very user friendly. And so Playform was really user friendly, which I appreciated. So there's tools for making work, and then there's tools for outputting and marketing the work, for getting it out there. And so as a result, I think what's going to happen is that we're going to have a digital renaissance, where there's a lot of just the sheer amount of work. We're going to have a lot of, it's just going to be like the regular art world, where there's a lot of work that probably shouldn't be out there. But we're going to create processes for filtering that, and and eventually it'll find some sort of hierarchy, for lack of a better word. But at the same time, a lot of these creators who haven't been able to monetize it or be paid for their work are going to have that as an option, and therefore they're going to be able to invest larger amounts into making interesting things. And so I think as a general result, the work is going to get better and better. And that to me is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Super exciting. For those of you who are in this artist talk and who are using Playform or getting into NFTs, you're in the right place. As Chris Trueman said, it's becoming a digital renaissance. So you're at the most exciting part of where we're starting. Yeah,
It doesn't feel early, but this is so early on still. It's so exciting.
it is really early on. And I think just every year there's going to be more and more progress in this space.
Mhm.
Even just, in this past year, I feel like no one really knew what NFTs were at the beginning, and now everyone sort of knows what they are.
Yeah,
But now it's should really get to the point where everyone really knows where they are. Not necessarily, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
It's
Well,
creating, yeah.
it also allows for such a community. I mean, like I'm involved in some of these communities that I think are wonderful. I met up with a bunch of them in New York, and it allows for artists to support artists. Because you can do editions or you can do things less expensively. Whereas a lot of times where I'm looking at a gallery, it's like, okay, well there's a $15,000 painting. I have to be really specific and in collecting. But with digital art, I think I've got, I don't know, 1,200 NFTs now. And so I've been able to support fellow artists, and I've been able to kind of network and join these communities, and it's been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to get to some questions that people wrote in the
Mhm.
chat. And for anyone else who has questions, please write in the chat and we'll get to you later on. So Jeff said, when you say it's trained on surrealism, who did the training? Was it you or the programmers of the AI?
So the on the surrealism model, Playform does the training on that, and uh, maybe Maribel would be able to answer a little better
Yeah,
on
I
how
can
exactly that
definitely do.
happens.
So I think in this process, Chris knew that he wanted to train with surrealism, which is a predefined style in the sketch tool, but he also uploaded his own work as a predefined style, which you can do as well. So what Chris did was he really converged every element of abstraction. And I would definitely say for those of you who are interested in the sketch tool, just play around with it. You can upload your own style. You can select other styles like Basquiat or historical artists as well. And it's definitely a fun tool to play with. Roxy Savage, she asked, did you place an image in the box and then draw on top of it in the sketch tool?
Well, okay, so not an image. The I did place on some of them. I did place an abstract painting. But what it does is it converts the abstract painting to black and white, and then I can draw on top of that. So it's not an image underneath there. It's a an abstraction, and then it just adds a little bit more variety to the marks that are being made, on top of it as well.
Yeah, and for those of you who, like, let's say that you have a sketch that you made on a piece of paper and you want to try it with the sketch tool, you can take an image of that and then upload it as well. So it kind of translates that sketch. So you don't have to do it with the mouse again. And then Jeff also asked, the figurative elements come from other paintings and photographs?
So the figurative element comes from the AI model that's been trained on surrealism. There's no figurative element in any of the things that the images that I'm feeding it. I'm feeding it pure abstraction.
Cool, yeah. And then Robin asked, looks like CreatoRanch is only available for USA-based artists. Any plans to expand to the rest of the world?
Well, we have a lot of artists from other countries. So if there's a specific country, message me. I know that we did have some, like Brazil has an extra number in its phone number, and so we had to make a change to our signing in process for that. So, but yeah, message me if you're from a country that is not currently supported, and I'll make sure that we have that one on there.
Awesome. And so for anyone else who has any questions, now is your time to write in the chat. And I just want to remind everyone to go to playform.io/AI Visions to see the full exhibition page. Also to check out CreatoRanch. And Chris Trueman is on social media. He's on Twitter at C Trueman and also on Instagram at Truman Chris. And you can look at those in the top of the chat as well. So Jeff said, Chris, I'm already seeing some image theft in the NFT world. Will safeguards against this be created? Really good.
Yeah, and a lot of the platforms are working on that. With like copy minting and and usually it's flagged and removed fairly quickly. One thing that we're working on right now with CreatoRanch is being able to, usually it happens with the more established artists. It financially doesn't make sense to take somebody's image that has never made any money off NFTs. So we're starting with established artists and making sure that we can confirm that things are being created that are attributed to them that are actually attributed to the original artist. And that helps a little bit because I'm in the space, so I'm in contact with a lot of these people to begin with.
Absolutely. And I think that, IP theft and creative theft, has always kind of been an issue, not necessarily just in the digital art world, but just in the art world in general. But the beauty of the NFT landscape is that they're more transparent. What do you think about that? Like, do you think that that rings true at all? Like that people will be more aware of theft?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's the botters can be very, very clever. So that's one thing that we're really trying to be attentive to is that especially on like say Hicketnook, I've seen a lot of problems where, somebody will use a bot with 12 different accounts and they will immediately buy up somebody's primary market and then just relist it for a couple Tezos later. And they just do that at volume. And so it causes problems to the collector base and the artist. So we're really trying to take steps to prevent bot issues and then also fraud from happening. It's going to be a challenge because these guys are pretty clever, but
Oh yeah,
we're working on it.
that's awesome and super exciting. Andre asked, is CreatoRanch only for iPhone?
No, it's we're on Android as well.
Awesome. So, okay, we have a couple more minutes. If anyone has any more questions for Chris, now is your time. I am super, excited to witness the launch of CreatoRanch. I feel like I've gotten a front seat to it, and it's so exciting. And also, congratulations for this latest exhibition with Playform.
One thing I did want to say is that this is a little bit of an internal thing as well, but this is I'm using the curator function on CreatoRanch, which basically allows you to split a primary sale, and part of the thing that that we were interested in is that from the physical art world, I'm dealing with a lot of partners, a lot of galleries, a lot of curators, a lot of dealers and consultants and such, and for the most part, a lot of those people have been left out of the NFT space because there hasn't been a way to sort of bring them in. And so we're conscientious of that. And so Playform, I'm setting as the curator for this so that what happens is that if one of my NFTs sell from this exhibition, the primary sale is automatically split between myself and Playform. And I think that that's a really interesting and innovative approach to this that helps to bring in business partners and galleries and the rest of the ecosystem.
Absolutely. I can attest to that. It is a pain to have to deal with that type of process otherwise. And that's what's so exciting about CreatoRanch is it's really created for creators and then the people who represent creators. And it's coming from an artist point of view and a gallery point of view. So it will be a lot easier. And I'm hoping to see, more exciting new technology as well. So Roxy Savage asked, what is the vetting process?
As in like the quality of the work, or as in the security of
like getting onto the platform.
Well, it's okay. So it's tied to a device, right? A phone number. So as long as you have a phone, you can create an account on CreatoRanch. So potentially somebody could have two accounts, but Well, at the moment, we're getting started, so we're a little bit smaller. We can kind of keep an eye on things, and we'll mostly do problem solving. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to prohibit people from getting on here and doing things. And so the idea is that if you follow who you want to follow, and so your feed is not going to be filled up with junk because you're selecting who you follow. And if you don't like what somebody's doing, then you unfollow them, and that way there's not a lot of overlap within your particular circle. But we want to be, and of course, there are traditional guidelines of violence and nudity and stuff like that we have to adhere to with being on the Apple Store. But by and large, we would like to be as open as possible for people, and then we want to be able to address the problems that come with that.
And that's really the beauty of CreatoRanch in my eyes, is that it's, there's not gatekeeping. It's not like you have to wait, like as Chris mentioned, you have to wait months to get on, or it's just too difficult to try to figure out, which is kind of set there in the first place to be exclusive and restrictive. So it's really an awesome opportunity. If you're an artist, I'm assuming that you are, because you're on this this meeting and you're using digital methods like Playform, I recommend checking out CreatoRanch and creating work with Playform to do so.
And I'm available, reach out to me. You can send me a DM. Right now I'm doing pretty well keeping up. So, I will definitely answer your questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Chris. So as I mentioned, please check out the exhibition page at playform.io/AI Visions. Check out CreatoRanch, which you can get to from the exhibition page, or you can also just Google it, look at it in the App Store on your phone, and follow Chris on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Maribel.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.